Welcome back to Scratching the Surface. My name is Justin, aka Money,
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
and this is episode number 21, I believe. So we got a new movie we're going to be discussing. I'm pretty excited. Kind of have mixed reviews on it. We're going to get into all of that. Junes, how you been, man? It's been, I know our last episode, it's been a little bit. Kind of had a setback. Life gets busy. Kind of crazy times for both of us with our futures. So it's just, work, life, all that. So how you been, man?
I've been real good. Like you said, life does get busy, but we always find time for horror, baby. And that's why we try to do this weekly. It's a love of our lives, as it is for a lot of other people. And I'm glad to be back. A movie here that very recent release, I should say, that I think is either going to be hated entirely or might have a little bit of love. So where will both of us lie? We shall see.
We're trying to shed light,
Yep.
to all the genres. We're trying to cover all of our bases. So like you said, recently released, we're going to be talking about Imaginary. So yeah, I had, really, I didn't want to have expectations, but you see these trailers, you see these things, and it's like, I don't want to put a label on them right away. And right away, I was kind of like, this might just be an okay movie, as Junes would say. So I was just kind of skeptical. But overall, I left kind of just shaking my head a little bit. I can't say it blew me away. I can't say my socks were blown off by any means, but I'm glad we're going to cover this. So, did you have any expectations, Junes? Did you, think of this is going to be pretty damn good, or just, obviously you probably go in most times like, we'll just see how it goes. What was your kind of just thought process there?
Well, with Blumhouse recently, they've had some misses.
Yeah.
And we have a budget of 13 million roughly. They had some backing here to just at least make a visually appealing horror film. Aside from the actual story and the scariness, they at least had a good backing. The director, Jeff Wadlow, I looked back at his resume. There's some pretty goddamn average movies in there, none of them of which had a really high regard for me. There was a couple on there that are just okay. There was Nonstop with Liam Neeson. He's kind of had a little bit of everything, some action, some thrillers, not really solely focused on horror. And I do think there's some elements that don't even feel like horror truly in the back half. I think he gets away from it a little bit almost. But my expectations were a movie that was going to be a movie that looked good. We were going to have some fun with this imagination land, potentially, for these kids. Kids obviously go crazy with their imaginations, and the idea of them becoming possessed by a toy, in this case, Chauncey Bear, is scary. And as parents, that would be concerning. We see that kind of grow throughout the film. They become more and more aware of the fact that their kid is potentially talking to not just an imaginary friend that she's making up, but one that's actually real and is messing with her and trying to put the rest of the family in danger. There's a lot more to this film, admittedly, than I was expecting, especially in the final act. We go off course entirely in the final act.
Mm-hmm.
I was not expecting that at all. I thought we were going to get a little more of a dumbed down film. It was going to be more simple in the back half, but we definitely go some places not expected.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up from our end. But also, make sure to check us out on YouTube, where you can see our live commentary, our faces, full-length episodes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on most mainstream media platforms, as well as TikTok. We upload clips here and there. You can check out some of that as well, and that is at Scratching the Surface 100. So the movie, well, we should review the cast first, too, really quick. Pretty simple cast. We have a handful of characters, mainly the family and some outsiders that we learn about throughout the course of the film. But we have Jessica, the main character, played by DeWanda Wise. Also Alice, played by Piper Braun. Max, the dad, played by Tom Payne. Ben, who's Jessica's dad, played by Samuel Salary. And then we have Samantha, who is Alice's and Taylor's biological mother, played by Alex Angelis. Taylor, one of the daughters, played by Tegan Burns. Gloria, shout out Gloria, played by Betty Buckley, who was just in familiar. Split. I was not expecting that at all. Mm-hmm. But and I wish, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I wish she had more of a role in the movie. Mm-hmm. But we also have the therapist, Dr. Soto, played by Veronica Falcone. I think that's how you pronounce it. And Liam, just another outsider, played by Matthew Sato, if I'm pronouncing that one right. And that's pretty much it. And like you said, you mentioned the directors. This is our cast. Pretty simple. And, you know, we can kind of get into it now. In the movie's strong right away. We see a dream from Jessica, and we learn, you know, too, that she's an author, an artist. She writes, I think, just children's books in general, and we see that she's won a bunch of awards, have been nominated for numerous things. She's got a creative mind in this movie, which goes along with the imaginary side of things. And this dream, it's pretty damn good right away. We see this spider-looking thing kind of crawling after her. I think she's just kind of getting chased, and she wakes up right before it gets her. And she's in bed with Max, who we get introduced to right away. And we see that they're, you know, a couple. We don't really know anything else about the family right now, but, you know, they're in bed. They kind of joke around about it. But we learn she's been having these kind of night terrors, if you will, or just nightmares in general. And that's definitely something, you know, that we're going to learn more about later. But I'm like, okay, well, you know, the CGI, whatever, it looked pretty good. And we see other, you know, we see Chauncey the bear later, which is pretty good. I think it just kind of picks up and lifts up the movie in a sense, you know, later on in the movie. But little to know, we figure out, you know, more about the family with Alice and Taylor. And Taylor's very rebellious. It's kind of like one of those movies. It's like a teenage daughter. But Jessica's also the stepmom of the family. So like I said in the beginning, mentioning the cast, we have Samantha, who we see later in a few scenes, who's their biological mother. But Jessica's kind of brought into the family by Max, obviously getting together. And the kids are just kind of having a hard time accepting her. We see a lot of tension from Taylor. Alice, not so much. Obviously, she's, you know, probably like 8 or 9 years old in this or something, and pretty young. And we end up, you know, kind of skipping ahead a little bit. She finds Chauncey kind of downstairs. You know, these scenes in these really in the first half, a lot in this movie in general, just back and forth scenes with Alice and the bear, scenes with Jessica. And really Jessica is just trying to attach herself to this family and really just trying to have a good, loving, emotional state with these kids, whether it's comforting them, just being there for them. And we see a lot with that in this film. And I think it's almost too much.
It was too much. There was that typical family drama that wasn't actually, but it wasn't that believable. Yes, you see horror films with intense family drama that is just chaotic and really hits you in the heart. But this one, it just seems super, I don't know, superficial for me would be the word. There wasn't a lot to really buy in with this family personally. And there wasn't a lot of scary scenes. The neighbor kid, I thought, was kind of a dumb character to have in there. And his moments that he experiences with Chauncey Bear, they're just kind of stupid. You get a couple jump scares, of course, but kind of stupid ultimately. The first half all around is really, in my opinion, money where the film struggles mightily. There just isn't much developing. Nothing's happening really. We obviously know Alice finds the bear. We obviously know Chauncey Bear is potentially an entity and has potentially also some connection to our main character, Jessica. We don't really know yet, but all of this takes much longer to unravel than it needs.
Yeah. And speaking of characters as well, other characters, we meet Gloria, played by Betty Buckley. I genuinely like that scene where Taylor's taking that selfie and she's in the, like, you just see someone And I'm like, dude, that was pretty good. And with Blumhouse, they're kind of all over the place, but like in this movie, they had a lot of scenes where it's suspenseful. It's silence or silent, like suspense, tension just created by like a just still picture or something, like quietness, like anything like that. Not anything up in your face, but like that was pretty good. And she takes that picture, turns around, and you just see like half a body move out of that window frame. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like, that's actually pretty good. And then it's, the crazy old lady next door, typical. And another significant kind of scene that I really liked, probably my favorite or second favorite, honestly, between that and this next one I'll talk about. But the scene where we meet Samantha's mother, I was like, holy shit. You have Alice talking to Chauncey at a little freaking kid like plastic table having tea or something, and a tea party. Mm-hmm. And Jessica's just overhearing, listening, trying to record it, and you genuinely think Alice is just talking to like another imaginary person. And the door, you just kind of see like a hand and arm, and Alice is like, I think she sees you, or says something like that, where Jessica's like, what? And she like moves in closer to see with her curiosity, and you just see this figure move out of the frame behind the door, but a human-esque figure, and you're like, holy shit, something's actually there. And she like pops out at her, attacks her. Samantha attacks Jessica kind of, and I was like, that is another, like, if the movie could keep doing that or putting stuff more in your face, that's what I'd want more of. Like, those are great scenes. I just wanted to shout that out. And to kind of tie in all of these characters and things like that, the reason why we meet Gloria too is because obviously she's an elderly neighbor. She shares memories of Jessica's childhood and was kind of there for her growing up, and saw her family. We learned she did a lot of watching, especially when her dad read her books and things like that. And we find out that her dad is actually kind of just in a care facility, or like a nursing home, if you will. And we don't really know why yet. We just know he's there, I think. But during this whole time, we see the relationship growing with Alice and or Alley Cat and Chauncey. So there's not a whole lot with Max either. I did like his character. He's just a magnet towards his kids who just clearly love him, which I liked. But I can't remember why he had to leave.
He was in a band, and I think he was going on the road for work. Okay. He had some shows he had to do. And this is so typical in a horror film. We see the dad leave, the family's stuck at the house alone. Kind of could have said that was gonna happen, so not too surprising. Right. Yeah, like you said, some of the revelations are good. Chauncey is kind of a creepy looking bear, I'll say. The eyes are kind of, I would say, they're not even.
Almost at an angle.
Yeah, they're almost at an angle. It's not symmetrical. So
like he's almost tilting his head.
A little bit creepy. And there's those moments when Alice is kind of talking in a teddy bear voice, almost a robotic teddy bear voice. That is somewhat creepy, but I don't know whether intentional or not. Kind of came across as funny. I kind of found myself throughout the film, honestly, chuckling to myself. I just thought something was stupidly funny. And I don't know if they meant to do that or not. Maybe they did.
I genuinely think the first half of this movie is so much more better than the second half. We learn everything about these characters, the creepy, intense kind of scenes we get, and the scavenger hunt, which we'll kind of get into now. All of those things we learn about Chauncey. And soon when the therapist comes in, I loved all of those scenes. It was the back half where I'm like, it's just, I liked learning more about Chauncey, and when this therapist came in and things like that, and the scavenger hunt, and we're learning why Alice is just so connected to this. I think the first half was a lot better, even though there's obviously more action in the second half.
The second half doesn't have Liam, though.
I don't know. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. He we don't need him at all. So I don't remember because I was in the theater. I wasn't taking notes, but I don't remember everything that was on the scavenger hunt. But one of the more significant ones is that Alice had to hurt herself, and she pulls that board from the fence with the nail in it. And it's cool because the movie, we see a nail, but the movie pans and it comes back down to it, and we see Alice's point of view, and it's like a dandelion, and she doesn't recognize that this is imaginary to her. And Jessica comes, she's about to slam her hand on that, gets it out of the way. She just barely nicks herself. But that was another intense scene, like I said, in this first half that I thought was really good. You know, you have all these scenes, like you start to see parallels with Jessica because, you know, later we do learn more about Jessica's past. So, like, what did anything else here stand out to you? I mean, as far as some of those intense scenes or the scavenger hunt?
It seems we were getting different types of entities in some of the scares. Sometimes we would get a spider looking thing. Sometimes we would get a almost Slender Man looking entity.
Yeah, like that dark, huge
entity. And then we also had like the giant teddy bear, although we never really got a good glimpse of it until the end. Usually the first half, I think if there was any scenes with the teddy bear, the giant carnivorous looking teddy bear, it was very brief and dark. I will say the best scene in the first half is by far after Dr. Alana Soto has that little interview with Alice trying to understand why she's talking to the teddy bear and if there's something more to it. She seems to have had some past experience with these issues, actually very closely related to what Alice is going through. And I just love that revelation when Jessica is like, you don't see the teddy bear? She says that to Taylor, and Taylor's like, what teddy bear are you talking about? That was a really good reveal, I will say.
You know, as an audience member too, we learned that Chauncey was also Jessica's imaginary friend. We learn later she's like going through old paintings and drawings and there's bears on every page. And she's like, holy shit, she herself is connecting the dots too. But we can certainly get into table talk Junes. What we're going to be doing is just kind of talking about our favorite genre overall and maybe just a second favorite subgenre. Mine definitely is gonna have to be a slasher film. With slasher films, you know, whether it's a home invasion, a killer on the loose, obviously that's what a slasher is, but just how real it can feel and how you can place yourself in those scenes. Whether it's a small town, out in the country, in a city, killer on the loose, how you are just trying to defend for yourself or for your family or friends, and what you can do to fight back. That's what I love most too, I think. And you're just always wondering what's going to happen. How is this dude, you know, going to survive, or how are these new characters going to defend themselves? Who's going to survive? Who's going to die? Type of thing. It always draws back to you in the past, which I love because you're like, man, like, you know, strengths and weaknesses and abilities from certain people that can have an advantage over this killer, and the freaking kills from these people, man, are what makes it for me too. And each one of them are different. They're unique, which is just why I love them. I love the presence of them. I think it's just such an overwhelming feeling you get a lot of times with these films. But yeah, that's slasher films, my favorite by far. Junes, if you want to go ahead and say your favorite, which I know, but most people probably don't, and then I can come back to my second favorite quick, vice versa. So if you want to go ahead and share your favorite, I know, but most audience members probably aren't going to know. But
I love hearing you talk about yours, Money. We all have I would say, almost a specialty in what we know for horror films. We all can talk about a certain subgenre more than others. We've seen more movies in a certain subgenre more than others. So we all have our preference. Like I said in one of our episodes, it's like sushi. There's a lot of different flavors, man. So with mine, it is sci-fi horror for sure. However, monster movies in general, I freaking love too. And you could maybe sometimes intertwine the monsters and the sci-fi at times. But with the sci-fi horror, you have films like Alien and Aliens, Prometheus, The Thing, The Fly, Event Horizon. These are all films that have so much science fiction implemented into them. There's usually some kind of experimental things going on in these films that the humans don't know could get them killed. There's usually a little bit of tinkering with these types of technologies, and it usually comes back to bite the humans, or the humans are out exploring space in an unknown territory and they come up against a horrific, terrifying foe and try to fight for their lives. Those are some of my favorite films, and sci-fi horror is usually on the cutting edge of ideas. There's a lot of amazing inspiration that goes into some of these films, And for me, it's a type of film that I can think bigger and greater outside of the lives we live in a completely different world with technology that is so far advanced that I can't even comprehend. And then to also have the horror themes, infused into those films is where I have the most enjoyment. So freaking fun. But the monster movies, though, are so freaking close. I mean, the monster movies are amazing because there's so many good ones. The Walking Dead started it all for me. Any kind of zombie movie, 28 Days Later, World War Z. These are all great monster movies. Obviously, the Universal monster movies as well, with Frankenstein, Nosferatu, Dracula, Wolfman. Those are all iconic films, and they're the type of monster movies that really stand the test of time no matter how old they are. Monster movies just really drive a fear into you sometimes because these are people or things that are so grotesque in a lot of the movies that it's hard for us to look away. We end up loving the film because of it. We can't take our eyes off it. So there's so many subgenres, and to find one you love to spend the most time in, I think, is a special thing. Of course, you want to see a little bit of everything. I love talking to slasher film too. So I love that we both can bring a little something to the table in our table talk. So it's a lot of fun to talk about, Money.
Oh, it is. It is. And honestly, you listed a bunch of great movies there. And like my second favorite would be sci-fi as well.
Mm-hmm.
It just comes up short of slasher. I just think slasher has a unique feel and the way it approaches audience. To me personally, I feel like has a slight advantage over sci-fi. But with sci-fi, dude, it's my second favorite. But the creativity behind sci-fi movies is pretty wild nowadays. I think, there's a lot of goats from the 70s and 80s back in the day, movies that you mentioned. But yeah, I don't know. Sci-fi for me is second, but I love both of them. Slashers just got the slight advantage.
Yeah, you made a really good point there with the slasher movies. I think you do get a more visceral reaction as the audience when you're watching a slasher movie. It feels more, there in real life. This can happen to anybody. People fucking get killed, man. It's a scary, terrible thing. And sometimes it's brutal. These slasher movies give us the chance to watch these films, subject ourselves to it without actually getting harmed or knowing that we're not killing somebody. So these are all instinctual things that are within us as human beings. I talked about it in our introduction episode a little bit. We are fucking animals, man. And sometimes animals have these intrusive thoughts. Are we going to act on it? Absolutely not. We have put that shit behind us, which is amazing as human beings that we are able to be conscious of our own thoughts and suppress those thoughts we have. I think that's fucking amazing. And slasher films are a perfect, like I said, film to go and to just subject yourself to.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking back to real quick, like back in the day, all those serial killers, these slasher films coming out, shit going on in the real world. And then you're watching these movies and it's like, dude, like this could happen to me. Like, it's so scary, and I think, that's just why I love them, dude. I just love them.
Good. That was a good table talk. It was fun to just kind of have a more casual conversation. Maybe we'll do that from time to time for the people. But a lot of fun. Thanks for directing it, for guiding us through that. And you the man.
Yeah. So, and if you guys listening as well want to comment, leave a like, be sure to do that. Leave any suggestions for us. We're so open-minded. It's a day-to-day for us with coming up with ideas and things to talk about. So we appreciate all the love, and we'd love some feedback. So getting back into imaginary now, the second half, which for me, but I'm curious to hear what you think. I want to hear your reactions, your thought process a little bit, Junes. I want to pick your brain. So I think we're at the point now where Taylor actually has an encounter with Gloria, I think, at this point, who invites her to her home. And they kind of explain what happens to Jessica as a child. And that's where I mentioned, too, where we have a scene where Jessica pulls out an old family box, cardboard box with all of her childhood, paintings, drawings, books, scratch pads, all that, where we learn like there's teddy bears in every picture. And we learn that Chauncey was with her the whole time. And that's why she's been having nightmares. Things are starting to connect. And there's a scene in there too where I think Gloria explains how like imaginary friends are spirits, and that's why there's like a paranormal sense to it. And if you like look up this movie, it's actually, I think paranormal is listed as like a subgenre to this movie. And they can be really, really aggressive if they're abandoned. And I think that's why Jessica's just always had these experiences. It opened up with her having a nightmare. And yeah, she goes through her old drawings, finds Chauncey, and we learn about Never Ever. And this, Junes, I just want to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear you ramble a little bit about like it. This literally reminded me, and you can agree or disagree, but like Cabin in the Woods-esque at the end. Yeah. Does it not? Like, it's just, I will say they have a great shot where they enter Never Ever. First off, the way to get into it, like it's through a little square hole behind some shit in their basement on a back like wall way deep in the basement, and it has kind of a cool effect that you could see it glowing when it's on, and they open it and they enter, and they have a shot, it just pans way out, and I'm like, this is Cabin in the Woods. Like, what are we, and this is the point in the movie where I'm like, what are we getting?
What are we doing? Like, literally, it's you I mentioned it earlier. We're going off course entirely.
Yeah. And I'm like, what? Like, this is just like, this is not what I was expecting. Now you have Gloria, Jessica, and Taylor actually goes with her because we learn, to enter the portal, she had to do a scavenger hunt herself too. And she had to inflict pain that was like the last thing, and she stabbed her hands with the scissors. And we learned that wasn't enough. And she fucking goes off on Taylor saying how she's like a brat, whatever, something, and makes her feel like this big. And that opens up because that was true pain. And Taylor just was like, damn, like you didn't have to go that hard, but it worked. I do remember that. And I was like, wow, okay. They enter and we see the shot, and I'm like, wow, what are we getting into?
It's unintentionally funny. It's just some of the shit. You're like, what are you, why is this there? Yeah. They have that little bowl of items, the scissors, a few of the other random items that they're trying to burn. Pretty goddamn stupid now that I look back on it. But I will say, I kind of enjoyed the scenes with Gloria and Jessica while they're trying to figure out why these kids are having these experiences and how it ties into this imagination land. She's got that big book with all of these records of past experiences with children having this imagination land or this imaginary friend that is kind of not demonic, but a little bit ill-willed. So I kind of enjoyed those scenes. They're fun. It's that typical go back to the drawing board, trying to get to the bottom of what's been going on. Those to me are always kind of fun.
Yeah, and basically the way this movie is going at this point is they're in this Never Ever land or realm, and we see Gloria die. And I was confused. Maybe you could shed light to me on it, Junes, but she almost kind of like, I feel like turned where she wanted to keep them there. And I was slightly confused by that now that we're talking about it. And then she gets eaten by Chauncey. Pretty good scene. She dies kind of off screen, but gets dragged through a door, eaten, and blood spills everywhere under the door frame. But she almost turned on them like she wanted to keep them there.
Yes. I think the writer had initially that first scene when we do see Gloria after we have Taylor take that picture. I think right away that cements the fact that, okay, maybe she might actually end up being bad in the end, an antagonist. Right. And that's what we ended up with. She just kind of flipped a switch. She right away when they were in the Never Ever, she seemed to just be so fascinated with this place, and it did look pretty cool. I mean, they had a bunch of revolving hallways going for miles probably, and everything was just kind of distorted. It was just this different parallel universe, and she was so excited to be in it. And she had been writing that book that she created about this very thing, so she was very enthused to finally see that it's real. I was being truthful the whole time. My whole life's work have been dedicated to this. And so once she sees that it was real, she didn't want to leave. She flips that switch, and when Chauncey eats her, that is pretty good. We don't see it, but we see the blood pour out from beyond below the door that he takes her into, that room.
Yeah. And the whole reason why they're there is they're trying to find Alice. I should have said that in the beginning, but they're trying to find Alice, and all these things are
Yep.
happening. And we basically see Jessica stumble into this door. She opens up this little window, and we actually see a pretty important scene, I think, too. That we should talk about quickly. But like, she sees Jessica, like her past self, experiencing her like running into, never ever coming out of it, running up the stairs, and then her dad actually, shedding some light to him. He basically sacrificed himself so that she could live, and he looked into the soul, the eyes of this main entity. I forget if they had a name for it, but and that's why he's in the hospital. That's why he's like a mental patient at this point, or in like assisted living. And we're almost nearing the end, but like, what were your final, thoughts leading up to the end here? Them, we have the scene where they actually find Alice, and there's a room full of presents and stuff. We see Samantha, a return of her. Kind of surprised, but Alice didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay, and they had to do a lot of convincing, I think, to get her out. And I'm just, watching this, and I was like, I just feel like I'm not that entertained. It just kind of flatlined for me at this point a little bit. I don't know what you thought. I'm just curious.
I'll try to keep it short, but for me,
yeah, I know. Yeah,
there's some stupid stuff, admittedly, that goes on. Very stupid. They hold the concrete door in the basement open with a fucking pair of scissors. That was the most absurd thing I've ever seen. Very dumb. When they were burning all of those things, the scissors, the other items, very dumb.
Yeah.
Just some really just odd choices. But I will say I kind of had a weird, fun time with it. I don't know why. It felt like a Goosebumps type movie where you're just on this thrill ride, really, at the end. Yeah. Is it what I was going for? No. Is it what I wanted? No. But I found myself to kind of enjoy it a little bit. And I think that's why I like the back half a little more than the first half, simply because it was kind of a wild, ridiculous ride at the end that I was just not expecting at all.
I have a hard time agreeing with that, but that's a good point. And they basically get Alice. They get out. Like they have a little fight with Samantha. She gets shoved into the presence. I don't know what's going on at this point, and there's just kind of chaos. And they try to go out, and they go back to escape. Yeah, like you said, they hold the scissors in that concrete door.
So stupid.
They go through the portal, if you will, or the door to get back into the real world. What we thought was the real world, but Jessica encounters Chauncey going berserk. She ends up stabbing him in the eye with the scissors. She gets out, and they end up sealing this door with like black paint
dumb.
Or oil. I think it was oil, because Alice actually lights it on fire, setting Chauncey on fire. I think it was Chauncey or that spider. I can't remember. I think it was Chauncey. But they go back, and we kind of see this scene where I'm like, oh, like it's just broad daylight. It's like a shot of the house. I'm like, oh, this movie's, it's definitely wrapping up here. And they reunite with Ben and Max at the assisted living place or institution, I think. And Jessica realizes she's still in the never ever imaginary world, because they all like turn their heads, all their eyes are black, because she's just having like a talk with Ben, her dad, and I don't know what they're talking about, but something happens, something gets triggered, and they all like turn on her. But I think the way they described it, and I have a thing pulled up here, but they say Chauncey used Alice as bait to get his real target as revenge for abandoning him. So yeah, I mean the movie too. Oh my God, we're at the end now, and I don't know. I just was like so disappointed. I think there's going to be another movie made about this somehow, but they're in a hotel, and we learn that Chauncey is thriving his imaginary life into another boy's life, and we actually see like the glimpse of a teddy bear, the ears and like the top of the head on a chair, like facing away from them, and they're like, is that? And they're like, yeah, that, I see it too, that's the bear. And it's a little kid, he like picks it up, and he runs off saying the same dialogue like, oh, or I think his name's Rufus.
Yep.
To this boy, it's not Chauncey, it's a different name, or some name like that. It starts with an R, I think. And he's like, he's always hungry. Can he come? Same dialogue as Alice was having with with him. And they're like, we should check into another hotel, or like see what's the next available hotel. And they end up leaving. And yeah, I mean, we're at the end now. Any final thoughts on that scene, Junes, or
No, I think we can dive into ratings. I think we've said what needed to be said, and we'll dive in here. And I'm curious to see what you've got. Per usual, didn't look at the ratings. Don't want to know the ratings. I want this to be as in the moment as possible.
Yep. So I just pulled this up before hopping on, getting all my stuff ready. Rotten Tomatoes has imaginary audience score of 52%. 52%.
You're joking me.
Critic score 26%. So it's cut. The critics are cut in half from the audience there.
Okay.
So
okay. All right.
Yeah, I pulled that up and I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense from a critic standpoint.
My God, I wasn't expecting that. I will dive into my rating of Imaginary. This was so reminiscent of the type of film. While the stories were very different, the experience was very similar to Night Swim for me in terms of just overall satisfaction. The pacing from our director is so haphazard. Nothing really makes a whole lot of sense. They do connect the dots at the end, which is nice. The first half is okay. The introduction of the characters was fine for me. The acting, they did the cast did fine. They didn't do great by any means. It's just a middling performance from everybody, really. The teenage drama, stupid, doesn't need to be there. The scares they weren't that creative. We had a few scenes that were kind of cool. A few of them they probably should have had more in the film, frankly, especially in the back half. But we end up going on this wild ride in the back half that, like I said, I just for a weird reason enjoyed. I don't know why. I think there came a point in the film where I accepted what I was watching for what it was. I knew at a certain point, I'm like, okay, this is the direction we're going now. There's going to be a lot of just questionable things going on, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. For me, that's kind of why I'm a little higher than you're probably expecting me to be potentially. But the story, while kind of creative, is it's just very lackluster. They could have made it a little better, but frankly, that type of plot can only be so good and so plausible to a certain extent. So overall, money, I'm going to go with a 4.6 because I did like it more than Night Swim. Yeah. But I can't, there's no way I'm giving this a 5. There's just no way in hell. So like I said, I'm going to go with 4.6. There's a lot of flaws here, but really there's just only so much you can do with this type of film, this type of plot. It's just another run-of-the-mill horror film that Blumhouse is just pumping out left and right.
Dude,
is it good?
I don't get it.
No, but is it going to make us money? Probably. I think their opening weekend they already broke even with their budget being around 13 million so far. So they obviously broke even, and they'll probably make some more over the coming weeks. So in their eyes, this was a success ultimately. Yeah.
That was well spoken. I think I loved your comparison to Night Swim though, because it we talked a lot about pacing in that review, that episode. And with this movie, for me, like I said, first half better, second half confusion, I think chaos, I think very misdirected. Just a lot of problem solving that was very mid. It didn't grasp my attention like it should have with a lot of other films that I know do. And acting poor. The main characters were okay. They were okay. I did like Jessica. There's emotion there. Cinematography, I don't think we really ever talked about so far, but I thought it was okay. The back half was pretty good. I did like the monsters. They were okay. Everything was just okay. It was just, this whole movie felt mid to me. And, when I see these scores from Rotten Tomatoes, I'm not surprised, especially from a critic standpoint. Everything felt slow. Nothing was in your face, which I really like. But I know, Blumhouse is just, man, I don't know, one of my favorites all time, but just missing more than they're hitting lately, and I don't get it. I don't understand what's going on there, but they're striking out. And to me, this film, I didn't want to have expectations. Like I said, I thought it was just going to be mid, but it just did not grasp me like it should have. I did like some of the intense, slower scenes we got with jump scares and things like that, but nothing really ramped up. It did not grab my attention like it should have. And, I could keep going on, but overall, I think any kind of detailed, avid horror movie watcher is probably going to have a similar score as us. I don't think this deserves even close to a 52, but with all with all of that being said, I'm going 3.9.
Okay.
I'm going below a 4, but I'm going high 3. I don't think it even deserves to be in a 4 category. Yeah, I'm going 3.9 June. So, Imaginary, see it if you want to see it. Obviously we wouldn't recommend it, but I had a good theater experience. I think it would have been pretty brutal if I just saw this at home. Not gonna lie, it might have even had a lower score if I didn't have a theater experience. I don't know about you, but
Yeah, it probably would have been zero point 0.5 lower for sure. I heard somebody
I don't
after
know.
the film right away say, it was a 4 out of 10. So
Seriously,
you were right in line with them. So
wow.
that's where it should be. I have a hard time going super high on films, and I've found I also have a hard time going super low. So
Yeah,
movie's got to be goddamn terrible for me to go below a 3.
this was just one of those movies, dude. I just had a hard time immersing myself in it, and the movie overall holding my attention a lot of times. But Imaginary, that has been our review for this week's episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share, do whatever you got to do. Comment down below. We love you guys. Junes, it's been a pleasure, buddy.
Been a pleasure, Money.
This has been Scratching the Surface. Thanks, guys.